Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to episode 92 of Drink with James. As you can see, I'm alone. Jenny was here last week. If you have not seen last week's episode with Jenny, please check it out. Tim will put a link somewhere. She was incredible. A lot of you saying you loved it. We had a really good conversation about continuing to create elevated content in a world that maybe sometimes does not reward that as much as it used to, and a number of other things. So if you haven't checked the episode out, please check it out. Also, I've been writing this email once a week to brand clients and leads and things like that, with just some insights. It's kind of like similar to the stuff I talk about here, but very much specifically for brands, and I'm not drinking and I'm not on video. But this week, the email was something that I think I wanted to talk about briefly this week, which was the idea of getting people to pause. So if you think about the way you go through an Instagram feed and you do this thing where you flick and you stop, and you flick and you stop, flick, stop, flick, stop, flick, stop. It's interesting, I don't think it's considered enough how you get people to stop more and actually look at your posts. Your eye and your brain, you get so used to your feed and seeing certain things. And I'm sure that you have influencers or accounts, or brands, friends, whatever it might be, that you follow, that anytime you see their post, you're gonna stop, you're gonna expand the caption, read it, you might comment, you might like it. But there are other accounts that you don't stop on as much. And I know the frustration with engagement and the algorithm and things like this, but I think something that's not talked about enough is that the first thing you need to do before someone's gonna like your photo is get them to stop and pause on it. I went around and timed some people in the office and timed them looking at their feed, and most photos got 1 second. So that means they spend 1 second on most photos. I'd say 95% of the photos that they're looking at, they're spending 1 second. So your first goal is getting someone to spend not 1 second, but 3 seconds there. What is the piece of interest that's going to pull them in? Again, you have your committed audience. I think everyone's got 10 to 20% of their audience that's pretty locked into what they're doing. They're going to stop every time. They're used to your little icon profile photo. So once they see that in your name, they're going to stop. They're going to take a look. They're going to read what you're talking about. They're going to like it. They're going to engage. How do you get the other people who are getting served your photo but not liking it? How do you get them to stop and spend a couple seconds seeing what you're talking about? And, we've talked a lot about Teza, just because she's doing so well right now. And it's interesting to look at people who are doing well and growing a lot right now and try and learn from them. And I think what she's doing really well is that her photos are so striking and so different than most of what's in your feed that it does cause you to stop and spend 2 or 3 seconds there instead of just 1 second. So look, I don't have any hard, fast things that you can do. I think that you can create visual interest. I certainly think that's a big thing. Create something that looks different enough that people say, I want to know what that is. There's a lot of other ways you can get people to stop on your photos more in the feed. What I encourage you to do for the next week, though, is just think of your own behavior. When you stop on a photo for longer than you usually would in your feed, ask yourself, why did I stop there? What was it about it? Make a notes, have a notes section in your app for that. On your phone, go to notes and say reasons I paused. And just for a week, take notes and say why did you stop? Why did you like things? Why did you expand the caption on this post versus the other post? Do that for a week, take a look at it, see what is driving your behavior, and then try and replicate that on your own feed. So that's free. You guys can have that one. We're gonna go on to the questions now though. This is one we've gotten a couple about. I need to outsource more, but it's hard. How do I figure out what to outsource, how to outsource, how do I find the right people? This is a huge question. Really in any job. I read this book called Titan. It's a biography about John D. Rockefeller, and your first day that you would go work for him at Standard Oil, that your boss would be like, your job is to try and stop doing your job as quickly as possible and do another job, a bigger job, and give your job to someone else. So the only way that you grow is that you need to stop doing certain things so you can do other things that are more important. And so I think the easiest thing to do, if you're doing everything right now, if you're a one woman or a one man shop and you're doing it all, is to think about, you can kind of look at this in two different ways. One, what am I really good at, but I'm not able to spend enough time on, and focusing on those. Another thing to think about is, what am I good at? What does this organization, if you think of your feed as a business, what does this organization need? And what am I going to be happy doing? And try and find those things. And if it's not something you're good at, if it's not something the organization really needs, or if it's not something that brings you joy, try and get someone else to do it. Another thing is just, again, looking at the stuff you're not good at and saying like, okay, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm terrible at invoicing. I need to get someone to help me with that. I'm awful at communicating with brands and staying on top of my email. I need somebody to do that. I'm not a great photographer. I need to get one of those. I'm not a good writer. I need an editorial assistant. Thinking about the gaps in, the kind of what I would call blind spots. This is how I kind of grew Fohr as well. It's just like, what am I not good at? Or what am I good at, but I just don't have the time to do, or it feels like somebody could do it a lot better. So I think if you write down kind of everything that you're doing on a day-to-day basis and tell yourself, if in a dream world, which of these things would I never do again? Well, then if you can afford it to hire someone to do those things, then like that's the low-hanging fruit, because you're going to be so much happier. And there are people, no matter how much you hate doing a certain thing, there are people that love that thing, and they're going to be super passionate about it. I mean, our finance guy, who is my college roommate, has been one of my best friends for years, but he just loves Excel. I mean, he's just like, he lives and breathes it. He loves it. Like, I hate it and I'm terrible at it. So it works really well. He was one of the first people that we hired that wasn't a salesperson. It was what we would call, or what he would call, a cost setter. Someone who's not directly making money for the business, but is helping that business grow. So a couple things to think about there. How do you find them? Finding people is hard. It's nice as you grow, you do have a network that's following you. A lot of the people that work at Fohr found out about the business through my blog, through my Instagram. A lot of bloggers don't like to hire their followers. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, you have someone who's super passionate about what you do. You want to make sure they have the right ambition, make sure that they want to come work for you to help you and to help you grow, not to raise their profile and hope they get tagged in your Insta stories. But that's someone who's going to be really, really invested in what you're doing and is on board with your mission. So it's not bad, I think, to hire from your audience and to ask, hey, is anyone out there a good editorial assistant? Or I'm looking for someone to help me with brand deals, or I'm looking for a personal assistant. As long as you have very clear ideas of the skills that you need and what your expectations are and what success looks like to you, it doesn't really matter where you find people. Beyond that, honestly, we have 21 people that work here or something. We've never really had much success hiring off of sites, off of Craigslist or any of the alternatives there. I don't know. Maybe we have 1 or 2 people max that came from that, mostly referrals. So I would ask your audience, 1. 2, I would send an email to every brand that you work with, every influencer that you know, every friend. Describe the job, describe the salary, what you're looking for, and try and get referrals. Should be able to find good people that way. So that's my advice. Next question. What's the best way to reach out to brands that you've worked with in the past and remind them that you're alive, update them with your latest work? I think we talked about this a little bit. I think all of you should get some sort of CRM. We use Salesforce here. It is fairly complex and can be expensive. We used to use one called close.io, but you need some way to be able to get your brand contacts into place and be able to communicate with them really easily. So I think once a month, you could send an email of things that you've been working on. I would, again, think about it not about what do I want to talk about and what are the things that I find interesting or my favorite things that I did this month, but how is this helpful for the clients that I've worked with in the past or the clients that I want to work with in the future? So I'd probably break it down by type of collaboration. If you're not getting brand deals yet, that's okay. You could break it down by type of content. Hey everyone, it was a great month. One, I grew 3% this month. My engagement rate's still like this. Blah, blah, blah. I had a chance to do this. Okay, great. Here's some of my top performing beauty posts for the month. Here's my top performing fashion posts. Here's this. Oh, also, just so you know, I'm traveling to Budapest next month and looking to do collaborations with travel brands, whatever. So giving them an actionable email that's really simple for them to do something with. Not some, I get a couple influencer newsletters. Now I think those are more probably targeted at their audience, but they're very, very long, a lot of text, nothing that I can really do with that. So nice and short, try and break it down by category. They should look at that and say, oh, I have a beauty campaign coming up next week. These posts look great. I'll reach out to him or her. So think about that. Think about what the brand is going to do with that email after they get it and make sure it's useful for them. We talk about that with content all the time. Make sure every piece of content that you're putting out is valuable and is useful. So yeah, it's definitely something you should be doing. I've never seen an influencer do it, ever. So I was telling you guys earlier about the insights email I send out, right? So we send an email to about 7,000 brands or something. Brands we used to work with, brands we currently work with, brands we've pitched, brands we've had meetings with, or people who've just signed up to get these emails. But once a week, I'm giving free information away. I'm just like, take this. This is something I know, and it's not just me. I get it from the team. Here's things we've been thinking about or things that we've learned, and I'm just going to give that away. We've got competitors on that list. It doesn't really matter to me. Brand gets that. It's something that now I've done for them and is super actionable for them. They can go into a meeting that afternoon and say, oh, they can take that and say they knew it all along. They don't have to say they learned it from Fohr and say, oh, did you know, have you guys thought about it this way? Have you thought about, is this photo going to get people to pause in the feed? And everyone's going to be like, oh, you're so smart. I hadn't thought about that. It's worked really well. We've already made money off doing this because people, they're not thinking about you all the time. And there are so many influencers out there that you really do have to try and get creative in trying to stay top of mind. So I think a monthly newsletter, and look, a lot of our top performing emails are plain text emails from me. So I know y'all are perfectionists and you're visual people and you're gonna say, I want a newsletter and I want it beautiful and I want it to be HTML and designed. Literally, you can just have Instagram links and plain text email. It does not have to be fancy. Start there, send it out. I'm pretty sure you're gonna get a good reaction from it, but almost no one does it. What are my thoughts on influencers creating podcasts? So, thoughts on influencers creating podcasts. Generally, I don't like it. Fohr didn't have an Instagram for the first 3 years that we existed as a business. We're a social media company. We're an influencer marketing platform. We didn't have an Instagram. That seemed crazy. And people would ask me all the time, why don't you guys have an Instagram? You need to be doing this, brand. You're literally, this is your whole business, telling brands they need to do more with their social. What is wrong with you? My point was, I was like, we don't have a story to tell. We didn't have a story to tell. We had nothing to add to the conversation. And so I refused to start something if we didn't have anything to say. Now, let's fast forward to influencers. You got a big following. You think, everyone loves podcasts. I'm gonna make a podcast. The first thing you should ask yourself is, do I have something to say? Do I have something to say that is bigger than just me? What am I gonna, how is this gonna be valuable and interesting to people? Is having a podcast and interviewing your friends who are influencers, is that an interesting podcast? I don't think that's an interesting podcast, no, I don't. I think that that's self-involved. I think it is self-obsessed. I think you're not really doing much there. Maybe your biggest fans will listen a couple times, but you're not adding anything to the world. I was just on Julie Solomon's podcast recently. A lot of you reached out about it. Like, she's an influencer, but she has a podcast about the business of influence and about how to be better in this space. And she's bringing on guests, and she runs it very professionally. She sent me, all these assets to be able to promote the episode. I've gotten emails from dozens of you saying that you found Fohr through this podcast. That's someone who started the podcast because she thought something was missing in the world and wanted to add to the world, not take more from it. So if you're an influencer and you have a story to tell and that story is not being told, by all means, start a podcast, send me an email, I'll listen to it. But if you think everyone's starting podcasts and I should too, I don't think that's going to do much. Being good on Instagram doesn't mean you're good at essentially talk radio. Being good on Instagram doesn't mean you're going to be good on camera. Being good on Instagram doesn't mean that you can create your own clothing line. Like, these things don't just go hand in hand. Just because you are good at taking photos of clothes does not mean that you can design clothes. Just because you can design clothes doesn't mean that necessarily you'd be good at wearing them and taking your photo in them. Influencers, it's important for anyone to realize what you're good at and what you're not good at. And if you can focus your life on the things that you're exceptional at and just let the rest be, you'll be, one, a lot happier, but two, you'll be a lot more successful, and trying to do things just because you feel like you should. Like, if you're not a good public speaker, you're not a good interviewer, you don't have a point of view, like, your podcast isn't going to be good. And that's okay. Like, that's totally fine. You don't have to have a successful podcast, A lot of people's successful podcasts, do they have big Instagram followings? Probably not. I mean, they probably have their fans that are following them on Instagram, but they're probably dog shit at it because it's two very different things. So don't feel like, I have a following, oh my gosh, I need to like capitalize on this in every single way possible, because your audience will stick with you through a couple things that you try and you're maybe not good at, but you keep ramming stuff down their throat that's not valuable, and they're going to start rolling their eyes and walking away, and that's definitely something you don't want. So look, thank you. We have a big week next week. We can't really, well, you're watching this video, it's already happened. But we have been killing ourselves. We've got a new site coming out this week. We're rebranding, changing the name of the company. We have a lot of new stuff coming down the pipeline in the next 2 months for influencers, so you should be really excited about that. We are all very tired and in need of a nap, but excited to have you all see it. So thanks again. Keep the questions coming. Cheers.